Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in, coming back and watching all this stuff. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna do a little bit different video today. I've talked about in previous videos that I'm wanting to try some different things here on my channel. I appreciate you following along very much. And while on the sort of surface level, my channel is really about tips and tricks for post-processing with some other sort of creative things thrown in, I feel like at a broader, more macro level, if you will, it's really about creativity and exploring your creativity and creative growth and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about. In some previous videos, I mentioned that I want to do things a little different and kind of expand my range. And so part of that is going to be this kind of video where I'm sort of having a photo discussion. In many ways, it's kind of like a podcast, except that I don't have a podcast, don't plan to do a podcast, and this won't be nearly as long as a podcast. In fact, I'm thinking of calling this something like, 5-minute photo talk or 5-minute photo chat or something like that, where it's basically, it's not going to be 5 minutes, but maybe around 5 to 7 minutes where I'm just talking about a particular subject and things that are of interest to me and I hope are of interest to you as well. Obviously revolving around photography and creativity and that sort of thing. And so this will be the first episode. So let me know what you think about that. I appreciate comments, likes, shares, subscriptions, that sort of thing. And by all means, if you have a better name for this show, if you will, suggest that as well. I'm thinking 5-minute photo chat or 5-minute photo talk, but I don't really know. So open to ideas there. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about taking good photographs and how to get better at your craft, and more specifically to not focus on making great photos, but instead to focus on making good photos. And so let me explain that. There's a business book called Good to Great by Jim Collins, and it's fairly old. It's been around a long time, and I read it years ago, but the gist of it is, he says one of the famous quotes from that book is that good is the enemy of great. And really what he means is that, like in business, you get to a certain level of good and you're comfortable with it, so you don't really strive to become great. And so maybe there's a lot of good things in business, but there may not be as many great things, simply because, for lack of a better word, you get satisfied or you settle and you're like, I'm happy. Things are good. Why do I want to mess with it? And so, he says that good is the enemy of great because getting good stops you from becoming great. And while I can agree with that in some regard, I think in photography, it's actually the opposite of that. I think that great is the enemy of good. So let me explain that. I think that if you go out with the aim of taking great photographs, my personal opinion is that's a little bit misguided. Now, there's going to be some working pros that are really incredible, and they go out on a lengthy outing and they'll come home with one photo and that's their thing. I'm not picking on these people. This isn't about that. I think this is for the common photographer, people like yourself and me, where we're going out, we're taking photos and wanting to get better at our craft. But I think if you go out with the idea that you're going to take a great photo, I think unfortunately, if that's what you're looking for, you miss a lot of good photos. And there are honestly a lot of good photos to be taken all the time. And I think, perhaps even worse, not just, do you miss a lot of good photos by focusing on only trying to find great photos, but I think the worst part is that you discourage yourself from taking good photos because you think they're not going to be great. And so some of this, I think, ties into social media, the desire to get attention and likes and things like that. Totally get it. Everybody likes positive feedback. And I think people are often saying, well, this is going to be a great photo. And so, I want to do that because it's going to be popular, that sort of thing. And, I struggle with that just like anybody else does. You don't want to get tied up in chasing something great or perfection. I think it's not about chasing perfection. I think it's really about progress, not perfection. Are you growing your skills and developing your craft and becoming better? Are you not just good, but are you getting to where you're consistently good? And I personally think that's a better aim than to go out looking for a great photo, because for me, chasing a great photo is often like trying to chase perfection. And I think we all would know and would agree that perfection doesn't exist, right? So how do we go about and become good? How do we get good photos and consistently good photos? I think it's about a number of different things, and I'll run through those real quick. And again, these are my opinions. I don't want to sound preachy. I think I'm a good photographer, in some ways. I know my camera well. I feel like I know the software or the post-processing things with the tools that I use. I think I know those pretty well. But I don't think I'm a great photographer. I have a lot to learn. I'm consistently trying to learn and grow and develop and become better and better. And someday, maybe I might feel like I'm a great photographer, but some of that's egotistical sounding, so I don't really want to talk about it in that way. but I think we're probably all on a similar path where, you know, maybe we're new and we're trying to get better, or maybe we're fairly advanced and we're still trying to get better. And I think it's important to strive for the better. So how do you do that? Let's talk about a couple of things here. The first one I think is you have to be willing to experiment, right? Try new things, whether it's lenses or software or techniques. Just learn and grow and develop through experimentation, because I think many of us learn by doing, and I think that's the best way to do it. I think when you're early on in your photography, you might do what they call spray and pray, where you're just hitting the button and you're hitting it, and just taking a lot of shots. In other words, you're spraying and then you're kind of praying that at least one of them's good, right? So you may do that some in the beginning, and I think that's fine. That's not a bad way to learn. I recommend that you change your settings. Maybe start with just changing your f-stop so that you'll start to recognize and know intuitively what f22 is going to look like in a photo as opposed to f2.8. So you start to learn those things. So don't just spray and pray, you know, without any regard for what you're doing, but do it in sort of an intelligent manner. And that leads me into one of my favorite photography quotes, which is, your first 10,000 photos are your worst. And that's by Henri Cartier-Bresson, if I pronounced that name correctly, but famous photographer, really well known for street photography work. But he said that, and this is back in I think the 40s or 50s when he was into photography and shooting and making a name for himself. And for me, that's a way of saying take a lot of photos. That's not saying go out and spray and pray and just fire 10,000 frames just to get them done and then all of a sudden you're a good photographer. I think it's about consistently, you know, thinking about your photos, working through them, thinking about composition, thinking about your settings and learning how they operate so that you can sort of visualize what those settings are going to do for you in a photo and get to 10,000 that way. In other words, use the 10,000 to your advantage. Don't just make it a race. You know, take your time and get through those so that you learn as you do it. Speaking of learning, I think reading books, reading blogs, watching YouTube videos, things like that are all good ways to sort of learn and continue to grow. I do that a lot. You probably do that a lot. I think it's a valuable trait. Another one that I think is really valuable is staying curious, right? You can be passionate about things, but passion kind of sometimes goes up and down, whereas curiosity is like an inner trait. If you're curious about something, it's like a thread. You just kind of want to tug at that thread and keep following it to see where it leads you. And let me give you an example from my own photography life, if you will, and that is I did HDR for years. I used Photomatics, and I was happy with it. I was happy with my workflow. I didn't have a need to change. And Aurora HDR came along, and I saw it, and I was like, you know, hey, cool. Trey's making software with these MacFun guys, and it seems kind of interesting, but I don't really need more software. I'm happy with my workflow. I don't need to change. Well, long story short, I did change. I tried it out, and frankly, trying Aurora HDR the very first time, I never went back to Photomatics again. I immediately saw the power of that software, and I was like, wow, this is leaps and bounds beyond what Photomatics was doing for me. And it literally put me on a different path because I started making videos about it, and then I started building this YouTube channel, and then MacFun, who became Skyloom, they contacted me and said, hey, would you do tutorial videos for our website for Aurora HDR? And I was like, sure, you know, of course. And then they said, hey, we're coming out with this other product called Luminar. Do you want to try that? So I got in early on that product, which I love and adore still today and continue to do videos on. And so just having that curiosity about maybe I'll try that product literally led me down this path of creating this YouTube channel and these instructional videos. And it literally altered the course of my photography life. And so that's an example from my own experience about being curious and why it's important. You never know where it's going to lead. And that's part of the fun of being curious. And that's why I think it's such an important characteristic as well. And so that's really what I'm talking about in this video. And that's pretty much it. It's not, hey, I want to be great or take a great photo. I think it's, I want to take a good photo. And more importantly, I want to consistently be able to take a good photo, regardless of conditions or gear or whatever. I want to know enough about the craft and my skill level and continue to expand my grasp of both so that I can consistently take good photos. I don't want to go out and shoot for likes or shoot for popularity. I want to shoot for personal growth and development so I get better at this art that I love called photography. And I think with those kind of things and using some of the tips that I mentioned, and there's plenty others, I'm certainly not in a position to tell you, here's how you become a great photographer. As I said, I'm on my own path of self-development, and I'm continuing down that path and growing, expanding, and trying to become better. But I think you can use those tips as well as a lot of others that you'll find from many other great photographers on YouTube, you know, wherever it is that you choose to learn about photography. There's a lot of resources available for you to grow your craft and your skills. And I think eventually, as we continue down our path, we'll become good and consistently better and consistently able to take good photographs, and maybe someday we'll become great photographers. So that was it. I'm gonna do more videos like this. I hope you like it. I would love for this to become a conversation, not just a video of me talking. So, converse with me, please, via the comments. Subscribe, like, share, those sort of things. Hit the little bell so you get notified of future videos. And I'll be back soon with more of these 5-minute photo chats. And that's it for today, my friends. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Take care. Adios.